we'll take a look at one of the most interesting navies in Star Wars history, that of the Galactic Alliance. All that and more in today's Star Wars video. Hey guys, this is Justin, hello, and welcome to another video. Today, we're talking what I think is a really interesting navy, that of the GA in the Star Wars Legacy era. Now, to be clear, when I say the Galactic Alliance Navy, I'm talking specifically not about the Galactic Alliance as it existed during the Yuuzhan Vong War until the end of Fate of the Jedi, which, you know, looked a lot like the New Republic's Navy, because it essentially was, but rather the Galactic Alliance as it was in the Legacy comics about 100 years later. I'll admit, I haven't talked Legacy much on this channel, but given that we're reading it for my podcast, Hapcaf Transmissions, it's as good a time as any. I'll do more lore videos in the future if you guys are interested, but first, just a little bit of context. About 120 years after the Battle of Yavin, the galaxy is still recovering from the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, which had happened the better part of a century earlier. The Vong, by this point, want to make things right, and so they work with the Jedi on a terraforming effort known as the Ossus Project. It's meant to revive many of the planets essentially killed during the war. At this point, I'm going to stop and try to explain what the GA is. So, when the New Republic collapsed during the Yuuzhan Vong War, it was replaced by the Galactic Alliance. Due to the onslaught of the Vong, the former New Republic states partner with the Empire, and essentially they all fall under the Galactic Alliance umbrella. The degree to which the Empire remains its own state is kind of confusing, because there's no New Republic anymore within the Galactic Alliance. It just is the GA, but also the Empire becomes a part of the GA. The degree to which the separate factions exist is never super clear, and also depends a bit on the individual writer. I kind of imagine it like a confederation. There's other parties included as well, like the Chiss. Either way, at some point, the Imperial faction within the Alliance becomes very powerful. You'll sometimes hear this referred to as the Fel Empire because it's led by Emperor Roan Fel, but this is still the Empire. Anyway, the Ossus Project is sabotaged by a secret sect of Sith known as the One Sith. The Vong terraforming goes terribly wrong, and the galaxy thinks they're up to no good. The Galactic Alliance, however, stands up for the Yuuzhan Vong, and the Empire takes this weakness as an opportunity to strike. Now, again, it's unclear whether the Empire was still a part of the GA up until this point or not. Issue 0 and 0.5 of the comic suggest no. Issue 1, on the other hand, describes the subsequent war as sundering, i.e. splitting the GA, while the Essential Guide to Warfare says explicitly that the Moffs forced the Empire to secede, starting another civil war. The Empire end up joining the Sith, who make themselves known, and they fight a war which sees the GA ousted from the galaxy and basically sent into exile. So in this video, sorry for all the explanation, but I hope it helps, when I talk about the GA's fleet and their navies, I am going to talk about the Alliance as it existed, fighting the new Sith Imperial regime. It should be noted that Emperor Fel ends up taking a ton of the Imperial forces. He goes into exile and teams up with the GA, so I'll talk about a couple of their ships, but we're focusing on sort of the New Republic part of the Galactic Alliance, which existed, i.e. the portion without the Empire. Before we continue, I'll just end with how the Legacy Era Campaign Guide summarizes it, because I do think this is helpful. It says, shortly after the apparent sabotage becomes public knowledge, worlds and sectors begin seceding from the Alliance. The Empire, still prominent and powerful, withdraws, and war rages for some time until a new faction enters the scene, the Sith. The subsequent era, where the Imperials fight the Sith alongside the GA, you'll sometimes see called the Imperial Civil War. Let's move on from that nonsense though and start talking some ships. The Galactic Alliance Defense Force, given its nature as a federation, was made up of both ships requisitioned by member worlds and required by legislation, and those directly funded and controlled by the Galactic Alliance government. If we want to talk about, say, the Empire Star Destroyers, that would be member vessels. We're looking at the main fleet here. Unsurprisingly, given its legacy, many of the Galactic Alliance's main military vessels are of Mon Calamari design. The backbone of the Alliance Navy, as I've discussed in the past, was the Scythe-class battlecruiser. I've got a whole video on this thing. According to both the Essential Guide to Warfare and the Legacy Era Campaign Guide, the economic realities of the Legacy Era promoted the use of small, fast vessels in lieu of the massive Super Star Destroyers or Mon Cal Viscounts of previous generations. The campaign guide describes the Scythe as being about a third the size of an Imperial Star Destroyer. I will say, actually reading the comics, it does seem larger than that. Either way, you can guess why it's called the Scythe. It has a massive vertical blade on the bow of the ship, which, according to some sources, as I discussed in a prior video, contains all of the vessel's weaponry. I think this is probably a mistake for your main battle cruiser. Having a vessel which is excellent at shooting things straight ahead of it, but poor at defending its sides is okay if it's, you know, in a properly designed fleet, but the Scythe was the GA ship, so I'm guessing, especially in an era of small, fast vessels, attacks to its flank would have been very, very common. Despite its design, the Scythe was a Mon Calamari cruiser, and it gets the MC-140 designator. The GA had two main smaller frigate ships. The first is the Shawshore, which the campaign guide calls one of the Galactic Alliance's most versatile ships. It also has blades like the Scythe. However, one thing that's kind of cool and that continues Mon Calamari tradition from the Galactic Civil War is that the two blades at the front can be swapped out for different modules, whether turbo lasers, sensors, torpedoes, any combination, probably extra shielding. I say that harkens back to the Galactic Civil War because Mon Calamari cruisers of that era were covered by small pods or blisters, which could be outfitted with a variety of technology depending on the ship's needs. The Shawshore would have been a nice companion for the Scythe because it provides more overall firepower, but still defensively is quite weak, and that's where the Tri-Scythe comes in, which is a bulkier, more powerful variant of the Shawshore, but which was significantly less speedy. I will say, I do quite like how all of these ships look together. It really does speak to how different the GA was than, say, the Rebel Alliance. Yes, you do see some Mon Calamari influences, but you've got ships which look like they were all designed by the same people. Even the New Republic was throwing in bulk cruisers, CR-90s, Nebulon Bs, whatever they had. Another unique GA design was the Sabertooth assault ship. We don't get any size for this, but given how it looks compared to a Scythe, this was a very small frigate, which would have engaged most likely in screening and point defense duties, as well as its unique function boarding enemy vessels with its two large teeth. So that's kind of funky. The final ship I'll mention, because it does see so much Alliance use, is the Imperius class Star Destroyer. By the time of the Legacy era, the Star Destroyer being used by the Empire is the Pelion. Yes, named after Pelion. But while the GA does have Pelions on their side when they fight alongside the Galactic Empire in exile, the more relevant ship here is the Imperius. So when Darth Krayt took control of the Sith Empire, he basically sent the Pelion off to Mon Calamari and had the Mon Cal engineers upgrade the ship's systems, resulting in better power generation, a better shield. The source book describes the difference as that between an ISD-1 and an ISD-2. The ISD-2 is called the, as I mentioned, Imperius, and the Galactic Alliance manages to steal the prototype Imperius, the Imperius itself, from the Mon Calamari shipyards, and it becomes sort of the flagship of their fleet. But that's all I've got. That's a look at the GA's Navy. As I said, I really like the look of this one. Logically, not excellent. I think they need smaller ships as well, but pretty cool nonetheless. Those are my thoughts anyway. I'm sure you'll let me know yours down below, and if there's anything from the Legacy era you're wondering about or you'd like to see covered, I'd be happy to do so. See you guys next time.